Welcome to Fonfara Reports. I'm State Senator John Fonfara, and we're here today with the City of Hartford Public Works Director, Keith Chapman. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Glad you could be here. And we are here to talk about an issue that has been an issue of importance to Hartford residents for years and years, and that is snow removal and how we deal with snowstorms in the city and clearing our streets, opening our streets to traffic, not just for downtown where obviously most of our businesses are located, but our neighborhood, our residential streets where people live. So I wanted to have Keith come on because I felt in our conversation about snow removal and learned about the new plan that he and his team have developed, and how exciting it is to see the kind of thought that has gone into developing this plan. And so I felt it was important that Hartford residents hear from him directly about the design of this plan and how it will be manifested in terms of really giving people the sense that the city is responding in a reasonable period of time. No snowstorm, particularly the storms we've been seeing lately, and no reason to believe what's going on in the world now, why that we should believe that will change very much, unfortunately, that maybe the days of quiet winters are gone, or at least not in terms of the size of a storm. We might not get a lot of snow, but when they happen, the size of the impact.
I can say that when I was in my previous employments in other towns back in the 70s and early 80s, we had similar winters as we're having now. Heavy snow. Average was 21 storms each winter. Average total snowfall around 60 inches. And we're back to that now. The trouble we have with last year was we had a couple major storms that were really impossible for the resources of most communities to deal with. So what we've done now is reallocated our resources, taken an inventory of our manpower, of our equipment, and recreated snowplow routes that appear on paper to be much more effective when the snow starts. It used to be that certain trucks were assigned primary arteries only, where they would just stay in the main roads.
Give our viewers some examples of that.
Maple Avenue, Weathersfield Avenue, Albany Avenue. Well, Albany Avenue is a state road, but Farmington Avenue, Homestead Avenue, those are main roads coming in and out of the city, along with many others, Main Street included, and North Main. And they were handled by specific trucks for the entire storm. The side streets where the residents, most of them live, were what was called secondary streets, and they were treated as such. The concentration was more on the main arteries, keeping everything open, rather than a combination of residential and main arteries. So with our new program, we have set up the routes where all the routes are designed to include both main roads and secondary roads. So we have 6 districts that we've created throughout the city, with 4 trucks in each district, with a supervisor in each district. Those 4 trucks will be assigned to that district and have a specific route that they will follow during the entire storm, which will include both main artery and secondary. And what will happen is the supervisor will determine at what times the trucks will report to the main arteries and plow everything in tandem from the center line right to the curbs. As soon as they're done with the main arteries, they go back into their side streets and keep everything hopefully open at all times for emergency purposes. The side roads will be plowed, 2 or 3 widths, and then once the storm is ended, then they go from center line right back to the curb on the side streets, as well as all the main roads. So we're thinking that this will work under most situations. Of course, if we get a blizzard, we'll beef up our resources. We have additional trucks available. We have contractors available, and we're better prepared, I think, than we have been in the past. And I think all municipalities are facing the same changes because the weather is changing from what it was 3 or 4 years ago. Much more intense now.
So practically speaking, because our viewers, they're sitting home watching this, they could live on Newington Avenue in the or Grant Street in the deep southwest end, or Victoria Road, or you know, somewhere in Frog Hollow or Blue Hills,
Right.
East side of the city. What would they see differently? What do you anticipate them seeing differently than what's been the standard, unfortunately, for too long in the city? Again, understanding the strain on resources, but we haven't done a good job over the years of clearing our streets in a timely manner. Sometimes it is more than 24 hours before the street is completely cleared.
Yeah.
After a storm is done.
We'll take a typical storm, you know, 4 to 8 inches or 9 inches. Each route is set up in such a way where they're almost equal in length. So all 4 trucks within each district have 6-7 miles of street that they're responsible for. What the difference will be this year as compared to last year for the residential streets is they're going to see the trucks much more often and see the same truck and the same driver that will know that route inside and out. So what a resident will see is a lot more activity. They should be able to see that the street is opened up throughout the entire storm. It's our goal to have all streets open at all times, where if there's an emergency, the police, fire, ambulance will be able to get to the scene. We will have full communications at all times. If a 911 call comes in, we will be informed from police or fire to where the location is, and we will divert one of the trucks within that district over to that site to make sure that access is full and available to the emergency responders. So
they'll see trucks more often.
They should. They should hear them in the middle of the night. Yes, they probably will not like that, but they will be in their neighborhood much more often.
But I think people can appreciate that a driver or two or whatever number have been assigned a particular area,
yep,
their neighborhood.
Yeah, and they've gone out already. We've had training on the last couple of Saturdays to make sure that every driver knows all of the uniqueness about each route. So he knows where the bump outs are, he knows where the speed bumps are, he knows where the manholes that are sticking up are located. So they should have a much better outcome at the end of a storm with their vehicles than they've had in the past.
I know in the second segment of our program today, you're going to talk about talking about what people can do themselves.
Right.
But if you can take a minute in this segment to talk about, will the plows be plowing curb to curb? Because one of the things that I've noticed in the past, they'd plow maybe a foot or 4 feet away from the curb. And once that happens and leave it that way, now the cars that come back and park are into the street, and sometimes you're with one lane going down the middle of the street.
Certainly in the main drags, we're going curb to curb. The side streets, the problem with side streets is they're narrow in the first place, and when we push back to the curb, we're putting all the snow onto the sidewalks. And it really becomes a difficult situation for those that have to shovel those sidewalks. But it's a trade-off. If we don't go all the way back to the curb, then, as you point out, the roads become narrower, and then if another storm comes in, we really get into a jam. So we're going to be pushing back all the way to the curb as far as we can go, yes.
Let's take a break and come back and continue with that, because I think we need to have people particularly elderly folks, who have said, and I'm sure you'll hear it, you've heard it before in the past in your previous work, I've heard it about how the plow comes along, fills up the apron after they've cleared it. So let's take a break and we'll come back and discuss that as well as other things. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Fonfara Reports. I'm State Senator John Fonfara, and with me today is the Hartford Public Works Director, Keith Chapman. Keith, we just finished up on our first segment about the plowing program in terms of eventually on the final pass that you'll be going curb to curb.
Right.
And you mentioned about how that upsets some people, but one of the things that I get a lot is people being upset that they've already plowed the apron in particular. And then the plow, sometimes I've done it, 5 minutes later, boom, the plow comes by. Yeah. What's your advice for people in that regard?
Well, after the storm ends, what we have to do is start over with every route. And we have to go back to the center line of the street, open it up, reopen it up again, and then we come back and push it all the way back to the curb. Now, when that is done, and only after it's done, should folks really think about shoveling out their driveway or their aprons and their sidewalks, because there will be snow redeposited on those areas if people go out and shovel before we get done. What should happen, if everything goes right, is we keep your side streets open. We'll talk about side streets right now. And once you see the truck start going up and down a number of times on your street within a very short time, that means that, and the snow has stopped, that means that the snow incident is over, and now we're into a cleanup mode. So once that truck goes up and down, we'll say 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and all the snow appears to be pushed out as far to the curb as possible, that's when you can safely go out and shovel. Before that, you're really taking the risk of having to do it twice. We're going to try to, from the time a storm ends, the last streets to be fully plowed should be no more than a 5-hour span. Somebody's going to get it done real quick, and if you're at the end of the route, you're going to get it done later.
That's 5 hours from the storm ending.
From the storm ending, right. And that's the key to this, because we're not going to push back on the side streets until we know the storm is over. But
let's review again. The reason you have this policy, and it's one I support, is because even on a street that isn't very narrow, if you have 3-4 feet of snow that hardens after the storm, and it does,
right.
Now a car, because the reality of Hartford is many streets, particularly in areas where you have large apartments, they weren't designed for the number of cars that we have today. The city didn't require 1 or 2 parking spaces per unit.
Right.
And so we know that people don't have parking on in their yards like many people in single-family homes do. And even in single-family homes, many do not park in their driveway.
Yeah, and that's always a question, why they would not park in their driveway. And I would recommend, if you have a driveway, put your car in there and get it off.
Say that again, please.
If you have a driveway, use it. Put your car in the driveway, or your car is in the driveway. And if your neighbor doesn't have a driveway and you can share, invite them over. The more cars that will get off the street before the storm and during the storm, the less towing will be done, and the better the road will be plowed, so you won't have these ins and outs and cars buried and so forth. So
in addition to the consequence of where, as cars return to the street because they don't have off-street parking legitimately, that you now have a narrowed street if you haven't gone curb to curb. So while, yes, there are people who, they can't wait to plow their sidewalks in their aprons, in their driveways. They're vigilant, just like they are about maintaining the care of their home. But maybe in this instance, it's better to wait a few hours. Watch for when the trucks, you see a lot of activity, not just one plow coming down, but maybe 2 or 3.
Well, you'll see one plow going up and down the street a number of times.
So if you see that, then you know, okay, now it's, once they're done with that, now it's okay to go out and plow that apron. And what you're saying is everybody will see that, unless it's a blizzard or whatever, most likely within a 5-hour period
after
of
the
storm terminating.
Right. And the reason why we have to push back to the curb is because the next storm may be coming a day or two later.
Right.
And we can't allow the streets to get so narrow that fire apparatus cannot get up through them.
Or ambulance.
Or ambulance, or residents themselves.
Yes.
So it's unfortunate that the snow is an enemy to folks. It's beautiful when it's out there, but after you have to, plow it and shovel it, it becomes a real pain, but that's living in Connecticut.
So let's talk about options for people who don't have off-street parking themselves.
Okay. There are some options. If the schools are closed, public schools are closed, which in most cases during a major snowstorm, they will be closed. The school lots become available for residents to park their vehicles in. We have also looked at, and it was a suggestion made at a recent meeting that I attended, to look at the parks as potential sites. And Goodwin, Colts, Pope, and Keeney have parking lots that will be available if someone needs to park their car. There's no cost for that, but in the school situation, you have to be prepared to remove your car if school is announced to be open, because the teachers have to park somewhere. So as long as the schools stay closed, you're okay with leaving your car.
Can I ask a question that's always gotten in my head and I haven't had an answer for it? If you move your car before a storm hits, because often the mayor will announce a parking ban before the storm hits.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So you move your car to a school parking lot or even a park in the city, and you put it there, and then the storm comes. Are you locked in there now for days with your car?
Days. No, my understanding, and again, I haven't been here for this before, but my understanding is the school department will plow as much of the parking lots as possible to allow people to get out of their parking lots. And the parking lots will be plowed. As soon as the storm's over, we will have our people, or even during the storm, our parks and rec people will be in plowing those.
But they should not attempt to remove their car back to the street unless that final pass has been made.
Well, and the parking ban has been lifted.
And the parking ban's been lifted. Very
and you
good.
mentioned parking bans. I just want to say that our plan is to announce a potential parking ban at least 8 hours prior to the storm starting. So it may be, we'll say that we announce it at noon. It may be announced that effective 8 p.m. tonight, there'll be no parking in Hartford on the streets. So you'll have plenty of advance notice to remove your vehicles from the street.
So let's talk about the consequences if people were to ignore that, because we know people do. And part of it is because either, again, resources or whatever the reasons, there hasn't been a really aggressive policy on towing or announcing that there will be towing. And so people essentially don't believe it.
This time around, this winter, we intend, if we call for a parking ban, we intend to enforce it to the ultimate. What that will mean is the police will go out with the parking authority, they will assist them, and there'll be cars ticketed, and then they'll be towed. And they'll be towed to the wrecker company's lot. The cost of that for the homeowner is, or the resident, is significant. So you really don't want to get your car towed, and you need to help the city by moving it to a safe spot prior to the storm.
So I think it's important that people hear that because we're used to a different policy, even though it's, when they have the parking ban, it's announced that there will be towing and ticketing, that I suspect most people don't believe that that is real.
Yeah.
And you're saying that will be real.
It will be real until the tow trucks can no longer move in the city if it is a blizzard. I mean, once they get stuck, then nothing's going to move.
Right.
But it is our intent to have all the streets clear of all vehicles early into a major snowstorm so we don't have this situation develop. And we don't want to tow anybody's car.
Right.
We would like people to, again, use your neighbor's driveway if they'll give you permission, or find a parking lot somewhere, use the school parking lot. But please just get the vehicles off the road, let us do our job.
What determines a parking ban? What type of anticipated storm strength or impact?
It really depends on a couple of things. If the snowstorm that's predicted is going to start out as snow and then turn to rain and warm up, that will decrease the likelihood for a parking ban if it was a 5 or a 6 inch storm. If it's a same storm, but the temperatures are dropping, then the parking ban is more likely to be enacted. So every storm's going to be different. But if we get a major one, you know, we'll say 7, 8, 9 or more inches, in all likelihood, a parking ban will go into effect.
Isn't it important that people try to remove their vehicles if they can, even without a parking ban, because the plow coming by is going to pour that snow up close to that car anyway, even without a parking ban. If
Yep.
it's a 3-inch storm, you're still going to get snow that will be pushed up against that car, won't it?
You will, and so you take a risk of not being able to get your car out easily because it's plowed in. Secondly, once you leave your spot, there's a chunk of snow sitting out there that somebody could run into, and if it freezes, then it becomes a bigger problem. So we would ask that don't wait for a parking ban. Please get your cars off the street, but don't go into the school parking lots if the school is going to be activated, because then they're going to have a problem on where their teachers are going to park.
So let's recap. New policy on plowing.
Yes, we're intending to keep all streets open at all times throughout the whole city.
Dividing up the city into how many?
6 districts, 4 trucks, or 4 routes per district.
And we're going to be putting that map up on the screen so people can see it
Yep.
during the program, and they can see their neighborhood and how that will be designed.
One thing, if I may, before we do go off, I would ask also that you not make calls to Public Works or 311. If you have an emergency, definitely call 911. But if you're calling just to let us know that we just buried your driveway, we're not going to do anything about it, to tell you honestly. We have a way of tracking every truck now. We know exactly where they are and where they've been. So if you're waiting for the plow, it'll get there. If something's wrong with the truck that's in an area, we're going to know that, and we're going to get a replacement truck out there. So patience is a virtue at this point.
So new policy on plowing,
Right.
and we're asking people to adhere to the parking ban. Wait until they plow their aprons until the storm, or even sidewalks until the storm is completely over and the trucks have made that final 3 or 4 passes, and find an alternate place to park if you don't have one on your own property.
Right.
Keith, thank you.
It.
Keith Chapman, new and returned Hartford Public Works Director. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
In your efforts in this regard in anticipation of our winter season. Thank you very much for watching. This is Fonfara Reports. I'm State Senator John Fonfara, and thank you for tuning in.